Sträckare över, så ta era platser igen. Så ska vi in i slutspurten. Hoppas att ni har behållning utav det som sägs, så att ni tar vara på möjligheterna att ställa frågor. Själv har jag nu tagit reda på allt om endokrinologi här under pausen. Så är det någon som inte vet, så har jag Wikipedias beskrivning. Det ger ju jättemånga poäng i Wordfeud dessutom. Så kan ni få in det, så då vinner ni garanterat. All right, let's go back to English. I told you earlier this day that the people behind this day, the organizers, they were very satisfied with all the guests that were available this year. They have been looking forward many years to get these. Just these people to be joining the lean healthcare session, and I realized that the next speaker is definitely one of those main attractions. So a big hand for Mr. Bob Emiliani. Good to see you.
Thank you
all the way from Connecticut.
Connecticut, yes.
And you've been to Sweden before?
3 times. Or this is the 3rd time, I believe. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Have you been to Jönköping as well?
Huh?
Okay.
So wait, I tell you what I've learned so far.
Yes. That's the word?
And talk.
What's the first one? Okay, where have you been?
It's an American accent on the
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would work back in my neighborhood. Have you been listening to all the speakers?
Yes, in the last, with Magnus's presentation, I got 4 words.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Quick fix, just in time, quality, economy. That's it.
Okay. And
I was listening.
Yeah, and did you? Who do you think is the smartest guy, Magnus or me?
Right now, you.
Thank you. Right. Okay,
Sorry,
Bob,
Magnus.
you will keeping this audience and telling them about what's the lean leadership.
Lean leadership. Some insights into lean leadership. Yes.
Yeah. And do you want questions afterwards?
If you like.
Okay. So if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask them afterwards.
Yep.
The stage is yours.
Okay. Thank you very much. I would first like to tell you about a connection between myself and Virginia Mason Medical Center. You've heard a lot of wonderful information conveyed to you by Diane Miller. But the connection goes back to 2001. In the fall of 2001, myself and my colleagues at the university were gathering research to write a book called Better Thinking, Better Results, and it was the story of the Wire-Mold Company's lean transformation. They were featured in the book Lean Thinking, but we wanted to do a much more in-depth analysis and discussion of their lean transformation. And so one day, I think it was November 4th and 5th, the healthcare professionals from Virginia Mason Medical Center came to West Hartford, Connecticut, to the Wire-Mold Company to learn from that management team about lean. And so as we were doing this research, I had asked a colleague at the university if he would videotape the presentations and the discussion between the Wire-Mold managers and the Virginia Mason Medical Center management team. And so videotape was made, and we used it in the writing the book and so forth, but then nothing much happened with these videotapes. And then last August, I was looking through my files and so forth and found the videotapes, and I transferred them from tape format to, what is it, MP3 or something, video file format, and ended up seeking permission from the various people at Virginia Mason and Wire-Mold and so forth to post these videos on my website. So what I hope you will do is go to my website and find these videos. It's under a tab that says Resources for Managers. There is 4 hours of unedited video. Okay, so it's not edited to tell a good story or anything. It's just, there it is. You see in its pure form the interaction between people who have done lean very well, but in a manufacturing setting, interacting with healthcare people trying to learn lean. And a very interesting conversation goes between them. It's a little bit long, it's 4 hours, but it's in pieces with different leaders speaking. And I think you may find that very helpful for yourself as well as your management team within a hospital, because there's a wonderful conversation bridging the gap between manufacturing and healthcare. So I hope you find that. And of course, it's free for you to see as you like. So what I'd like to talk to you today about is leading the lean healthcare organization. And specifically want to emphasize these 3 points. I think everybody knows the first point, but lean management works wherever information is processed and exchanged. So it applies both to creative and repetitive work. The objective is to get work, material, and information to flow in ways that do no harm to people. And this is a very important point, and I will elaborate on this in the first few slides. And then finally, lean must be led. I mean, it's a different way of thinking, it's a different way of doing things, and it requires people to lead this effort to move away from the conventional management practice and to adopt lean management. So it requires leadership engagement to lead this. This is applicable to any organization because, again, it applies to wherever we process information and exchange information between customer and supplier, both internally and externally, patients and so forth. So there's a definition of lean, and you will have access to these slides, so I hope you will look closely. But I just want to reiterate, it's a non-zero sum, meaning win-win, principle-based management system focused on creating value for end-use customers and eliminating waste, unevenness, and unreasonableness using the scientific method. And so very important features of this definition is non-zero sum, meaning win-win. It cannot do harm. It cannot be win-lose. You're talking about creating value, improving the patient experience, eliminating waste, we know, but also unevenness and unreasonableness. We have to look for and understand that as well. And introducing the scientific method, not just to technical work, but to managerial work as well. 2 key principles are continuous improvement and respect for people. These are inviolate principles. They have to be part of lean management practice. It is not up to managers to say, I'll take one and leave the other. And then finally, you see some key objectives and so forth, and these are supported by well-defined tools and processes. The pioneers in lean management, this goes back many years, it has evolved over time. They all understood through their own practice of this. None of these people shown in the pictures were academics. They were all management practitioners. And they all recognized that in order for this to work, in order to make improvements on a continuing basis and to get material and information and work processes to flow without interruption, to remove cues and so forth, there has to be the application of not one but 2 principles. And so the names of these principles have changed a little bit over time, but always with have the same intent, the same spirit associated with them. And particularly that this has to be something that is good for people, and not just the employees of an organization, but the patients in your case, the suppliers, the community, the payers, and so forth. This has to be of benefit for all, as the middle gentleman, Frank Woolard, characterized it. So we know very clearly what works and what doesn't, and so as you embark forward on your lean journeys, you must be very careful and conscientious to understand and apply this respect for people principle, and please do not think you know what it means. The words are easy, but it is the thing which most people stumble upon and have bad outcomes as a result. This is one of the early pioneers, and he had much trouble with people comprehending the early form of lean management, and people were misunderstanding it, misusing it, and so forth. And this gentleman, Frederick Taylor, just essentially said, stop. It ceases to be lean management the moment it's used for bad. I did not create something here for you to use and have bad effect on people. And so this is a reflection of his frustration, which we see today. I'm a little bit frustrated because I see people who use lean management for bad. And so we don't want that to happen anywhere, and of course not in healthcare. So I think the same sentiment applies today. It ceases to be lean management the moment it is used for bad. It means we're doing something else other than lean management. We cannot call it that. It is something different. The thing that we do not want to have is the application of only the one principle, continuous improvement. So the words the many mean many organizations just adopt the one principle and its associated tools and methods, and they leave the rest behind. And as a result, they create in their organization a win-lose, zero-sum form of lean, which is more tactical in its orientation to cut costs in the short term or something like that. And they create a type of lean that is perceived by employees as being very scary. You know, this is not the impression, that this is not what you want employees to think about with respect to improvement. You do not want it to be scary. You do not want to repel them and drive them away. You want their daily involvement and engagement in learning how to identify problems and how to make improvements and so on. The scary lean is bad stuff, you know. I mean, even if you're, whatever line of work you're in healthcare, you may read newspaper headlines like this that says, this best facility is going to close, and maybe if you read the first paragraph, it talks about lean, and so it creates a bad impression. People say, oh, this lean stuff is no good. You know, look at these people. They worked hard, they did good things, and no matter how hard they worked, it just was a bad outcome for them. And this is very damaging for lean management when you see good effort made by people here, yet management thinks of lean in a zero-sum, tactical, win-lose kind of way, and it sends a terrible message to people even outside of this kind of business. So what we normally see, unfortunately, and we've seen this for a long time, is zero-sum way of thinking about lean management, where the pie, the benefit of an activity or economic enterprise is a pie, and people fight over their size of the individual slices. And there's a big fight over this. And in the days of early 1900s with Frederick Taylor, he was very explicit at saying, stop. We have to stop fighting over our individual sizes of the pie and instead grow the pie. So he was very much trying to create a management system in which each of the key stakeholders in a business, the customers, the patients, the community, the employees, payers and suppliers and so forth, they all achieved better outcomes rather than making a trade-off of one against the other. So this idea of growing the pie rather than fighting among the stakeholders about their individual slices has been going on for a long, long time, for many years. And it ends up being something that just is very difficult to teach people, to teach managers how to do the non-zero-sum, win-win type of management, lean management, compared to conventional management, which tends to be much more strongly zero-sum in its orientation. We try very hard, you know, again, this goes back many decades, and people have put forth great efforts to try and teach this stuff, but it's difficult. And so I think you should be aware with your eyes wide open to understand that to transition some thinking from manager from left to right is not automatic. You know, just because you show a pie chart to explain it doesn't mean people understand it. They're not sure the pathway to take to go from one to the other, so there's some uncertainty and so on. So it's not a simple effort to go from one to the other. So what we have found is a lot of application of lean is done in ways that are mean, that there are different types of leadership behaviors that prevent flow. The office politics, blaming people. I ask my students, how many of you know what's expected of you? And almost no hands are raised. They don't know what's expected of them at work. They just have to do whatever it takes. And so in this kind of environment, it's very unpredictable. It's high variability. They don't know if what they did was the right thing to do or not. And it's very subjective based upon their manager's opinion of whether they succeeded or not. Micromanaging people, having a very high ego, humiliating somebody in public, blaming somebody in front of other people. When one can't admit errors, you have to be able to admit errors in lean. I mean, this is fundamental. retaliating, and so on. I mean, these are the kind of behaviors that are zero-sum in their orientation, and they break down or block the flow of information, and they cause information to be processed in batch and queue manner. And this is what we're trying to get away from with Lean, is create flow, so that behaviors of the leaders must be complementary and consistent with what we're trying to achieve in Lean. So if we're trying to achieve flow in Lean, then the behaviors have to be of the type that help enable flow in material and information processing and workflows and so on. So there's leadership behaviors, and these are some examples of the kind that are associated with effective Lean leadership. And these are the kind of behaviors that enable people to improve and to help get information to flow, so we don't have nasty and ugly surprises, so that we know about problems immediately rather than a year or 2 or 3 later. And I think all of you in your organization, you must know of examples of problems that have lingered for 2, 3, 4, 5 years uncorrected. I mean, we just go on our daily work as if they were not a problem. So the behaviors in those situations tends to be, on the right-hand side, behaviors that prevent flow, where we just let these problems linger on for years and years, really unrecognized and therefore uncorrected. So there's a very clear association between the leadership behaviors that are required to enable flow and those which prevent flow. Now, you see a lot of this scary, zero-sum Lean that is mean. This is very unfortunate. Why does this occur? Well, there's many different reasons, but managers tend to be enormously overconfident with what they know, what they think they know. And they think they can move down this Lean path without doing much work. And the reality is you're learning something completely new, so you have to study and learn new things. So there's books to read and so on, and there's experiences to engage in, Kaizen, as Diane called it, rapid improvement events for Virginia Mason, and so on. This is very similar to learning to play a musical instrument such as a piano. There is involvement of daily practice, which I will elaborate more later. But I want to emphasize that we tend to be greatly overconfident that we know what we're doing, and we don't. So we have to be humble, as you'll see come up later. So Lean is not a minor change in what you already know about work and about people, about organization and management and leadership and time. It's even different. Lean is different with respect to how we even think about time. So it really is a situation where we have to go back to school and think of things differently on a fundamental basis. Now, the good news is that for most people, doing this is a lot of fun, because they're finally realizing that there is a way to do things that result in outcomes that we all want to achieve, which is high quality, patient safety, good results, few problems, and so on. And so we can see the pathway, provided we're open to challenging our beliefs and assumptions and willing to learn new things and put in some hard work of daily practice, but it's also fun. And I do want to emphasize the fun aspect, because I think not a lot of people understand that when Lean is done well and with proper understanding and application of the respect for people principle, I mean, people really do have a good time with this. They have fun, there's smiles on their face, they cannot believe what they achieved, and so on. So, a lot of fun to get involved with this. Think of it another way. If you're not having fun, something's wrong, right? And so you need to understand, little root cause analysis, what's causing our not fun problem, what's causing our scary Lean, and how do we improve that? So Lean, and I put in parentheses here flow, because again, we're trying to get work processes to flow without interruption. And in order to do that, we have to understand our process in a lot of detail. And while doing that, we also identify many quality and safety issues and so forth, and help improve all of that, elevate the level of quality and so forth. So unfortunately, what many people think is they can take their current knowledge, which is all based in conventional management and batch and queue processing, and take a course in Lean or read a book and just kind of bolt this on to their conventional knowledge, and they're ready to go. And so this way of thinking sees lean as nothing more than some tools for continuous improvement, where everything else stays the same, except we just use some lean tools to make some processes a little bit better. Where in fact, what you have to do is shrink your current knowledge of how processes operate and add and create this new lean knowledge through various studies, participation in Kaizen, and so on, and continue to grow that lean knowledge over time, because with lean, you are never done learning. With conventional management, you're done learning very quickly because it tends to be zero-sum. So in conventional management, zero-sum would be, I win, you lose. Is there anything else for me to learn? No, that's it. That's all, that's the whole name of the whole thing. Where in lean, in a non-zero-sum thing, you're never done learning because there's always situations where 2 plus 2 is not exactly equal to 4. It might be 3.5. It might be 5. It might be 2. It's always a little different situation than in a zero-sum world. So you have to shrink your current knowledge. It never goes to zero because we live in the real world and we have to interact with other people and organizations that do not understand lean and do not practice lean and so forth. So we cannot lose sight of how other stakeholders within our system think and how they operate. Now, we want to try to influence them because our processes are connected between us and try to influence them to understand and adopt lean, but we still have to have a little bit of this current knowledge in recognition of other, of the world out there and how it operates. But internally within our healthcare organization, we want to shrink that current knowledge and grow the lean knowledge. So what you want to try to achieve is fun lean, win-win, right? So people are not marginalized, whether it's an employee, a supplier, a payer, et cetera. You don't want to have these sorts of bad outcomes. I show the respect for people principle here as a bigger circle because this is the more challenging and more difficult part of lean management. Continuous improvement, representing the tools and methods and so forth, are relatively easy to understand and apply, and they yield wonderful results, but you can mess those up too. You have to be careful in terms of how you understand these tools and how they link together. There's connections between these various tools and methods that are not initially obvious to many people. So there's actually not so many organizations, the few, that practice lean well and in a way that employees, for example, would say, we're having a great time. We're doing things we never thought possible. We had defect rates way up here, our quality problems that we could never fix, and now they're way down here. And we're having a great time doing it. We're having some laughs together. It's not a vacation. It's work, but it's a good time, and people are enjoying themselves. So, think about lean this way in terms of what you want to try to achieve. Reminds me of the 70s movies and people doing the twist and whatnot. This is the way I think we want to have a mental image of lean, or how it should sound in our organization if we could put, music to it. You want to have fun with this. You want to make meaningful progress. You want to people be happy. People feel like they're contributing. Their voice is heard. They're able to try new things, try small experiments, and see how they work out, all in an effort to improve the patient's experience. So, managers have to put both principles into practice. And related to each principles are, different tools and methods and so forth. And in this diagram, the continuous improvement principle is presented above the waterline because it is easy to see when you visit a healthcare organization and you see them doing lean. You'll see visual controls and different things like that. What's really going on is below the waterline. The action in terms of management's thinking and how they're adjusting policies and practices and so forth to be consistent with lean thinking is the bigger part of the iceberg. I remember when I was speaking with Ori Fiumi, who was the vice president of Wire Mold, and they would get visitors to Wire Mold all the time. And in doing the research for the book, we were talking one day, and he said, You know, people can walk through this place all they want, but they're never really going to understand what's going on because of what's happening below the waterline. And that's really where the, action in this is. So most organizations, their achievement focus is set very low. They think of Lean as a bunch of tools. They start out, B&Q means batch and queue, processing of information and so forth. They start out batch and queue and say, this is no good, we need to improve because of pressure from competition or from other sources. And so they adopt Lean tools. And then after 3, 5, 7, 10 years, they start to see Lean as more than just tools, and they say, well, this really is our operating system, and this is the way we do things in this organization, particularly where it comes to the actual delivery of the service, and that part of the organization, but nowhere else. And then they sit there for many years with this perspective that Lean is an operating system, and most organizations never make this leap to understanding Lean management as an overall management system, one whose intent is to completely replace conventional management and batch and queue processing with Lean and flow. So we know, again, what works and what doesn't, and some companies start out with tools and operating system. Some quickly, think of it in a more broader way as a Lean management system. Other people get stuck there at the bottom. I would recommend, knowing what we know today, that you set as your achievement focus where the big H for the hospital is. Start there and move forward from that. I'd like to just give you a little general comparison here between some leadership characteristics in traditional leadership, where we have a conventional management and batch and queue processing, compared to Lean leadership. And so there's a correspondence here. The traditional leadership tends to be an inward focus, concerned with personal traits, behaviors, tend to guard information, and therefore process it in a batch and queue manner. Tend to delegate activities to other people, results focus, short term, zero sum, and so on. Whereas Lean leadership is an outward focus with a very good sense of time and time consciousness, and asking questions like, how long does it really take to do that work? For an approval of some purchase order with many, kroner, a large purchase order. Does it actually take 5 weeks for approval, or are the approvals actually 10 seconds each? The total approval's 3 minutes, but it takes 5 weeks for the approval. So they're always asking these kinds of questions. How long do things actually take? And if we can get a purchase order through in a day for an emergency, why can't we do it like that all the time? So anyway, the focus here is more on beliefs and behaviors rather than in the traditional leadership, just behaviors. Share information, participate in improvement. You have to be a leader, so you lead by example. Learning, we're never done learning. There's always more to learn. Flow, eliminate the cues. Process and results, not just results only, not just process only, but a balance of the two. Thinking for the long term, non-zero sum, and also daily change rather than, in the traditional case of leadership, slow to change, slow to recognize change, and so forth. And we have practical examples of these types of organizations that are slow to change, and they're in different sorts of businesses. You heard Virginia Mason. They have a number of different competitors in the area, and they could have ceased to exist if they didn't change in relation to their competition. We have examples also of industrial corporations that the management was slow to change. General Motors, of course, they went bankrupt. We see problems at Nokia, big problems, now. So this is not theory stuff. This is all practical, real-world things that are happening. Now, the manager has a choice here. They can participate in improvement activities and as part of their process to learn something new, or they can delegate it. Obviously, if they delegate it, they're not going to learn anything new. And the workers that are participating in improvement are going to have a difficult time speaking to the managers who don't understand what's happening as a result of the improvement. So while it is true that if managers delegate, yes, some little bit improvement will be achieved, but you'll also have a lot of backslide going in reverse as well. Whereas if the managers at all levels are participating, then the amount of improvement achieved is much higher and much faster. And again, everybody's learning something new here. You know, if you think of it from sort of a logical perspective, if people at lower levels learn something new and the people at higher levels don't, I mean, you develop a communication problem that you cannot overcome. So, Lean is not just about Lean tools. The pie chart on the left shows the way we think of work. Two types of work, value-added and non-value-added but necessary work, and then waste. But we also have to think about, within the context of the respect for people principle, the behaviors, the leadership behaviors that add value. There's leadership behaviors that are necessary but don't add value. So nobody's perfect, right? So people make mistakes. And then there's behaviors that are clearly waste and that repel people and push people away and cause them to not want to engage and participate in improvement activities. So we have to think of not just the left-hand side of what this pie chart is saying, but also on the right-hand side as well. And this is a connection that has been difficult to develop in people if they don't have the first-hand experience with Lean. So, for example, if the managers delegate Lean to lower-level people, they will get this red line at the bottom, right? And if they do both of these things, then you start to get that blue line and much greater level of improvement faster. You have to do some things which may not be so big an issue in Sweden in terms of the first one, which is a qualified job guarantee. But in America, this is a big problem because senior managers will tell employees, Lean is very important, we must do this, it's for our survival and so forth. So the employees will work hard to improve processes, and then managers will lay off employees as a result of that process improvement. And of course, this poisons Lean in an organization. The workers say, oh, I don't want anything to do with that. Look what happened to my friends over here. They were laid off as a result of improvement. So management has to provide what is called a qualified job guarantee, which says you will not be unemployed as a result of continuous improvement activities. Your job may go away, and we will work with you in a collaborative fashion to negotiate a mutually acceptable job for you to do as your old job goes away. You also have to have a no-blame environment, an environment that focuses on the process, not the people. So on the right-hand side, I'm trying to illustrate that we have to move away from this idea that, of squeezing the lemon and so forth and blaming people when there are problems, to something that is more natural and more, outcomes that are more desirous that people have. I mean, nobody wants to lose their job. Who here wants to be blamed? Who here drives into work or takes a train and says, I can't wait to get blamed today. I hope my boss yells at me in front of others. That would be even better. I messed up. I got all this wonderful attention from these people. This is not the normal sort of thing we say. We don't ask to be blamed. We don't ask to be yelled at and so forth, either by a peer or especially in the case of a manager. So we have to think about the effects of these things on people's willingness to want to participate in improvement activities. So you can think of it this way. If I want to make brownies, I don't know a Swedish word for brownies. Brownies. Now I know. Thank you very much. So you need the flour, the sugar, you need the dry stuff, and you need the wet stuff, right? If you just put the dry stuff in the oven, it becomes drier, right? You need both. So similarly with Lean, the dry stuff is the technical stuff, the tools, the methods, the formulas, and the wet stuff is the people, their energies and ideas and enthusiasm. So if you want to make Lean in your organization, you need the people ingredient. But if you do things in such a way that turn people off, where they have a negative outcome as a result of Lean and so on, then you're not going to make Lean. You're making something else. You're making headaches is what you're making for yourself and others. One of the mistakes that organizations make is they do lots of continuous improvement activities, and they achieve what is called point kaizen. So different processes in the organizations are improved. Little piece here, a little piece there, a little piece there, and so forth. So they work for 10 years improving all these processes in isolation of one another, and they're unable to connect the processes to achieve flow. So there's good examples in a bad way, of companies that have worked very hard for 10, 20 years in Kaizen, but they still have batch and queue processing. They still do not have flow. Within a given work area, they have flow, but the output sits in queue. Okay? Then when the next one picks up the work, they have flow, but then it sits in queue. So the only thing they have done is made certain processes more efficient within the narrow confines of that particular process, but they have not achieved flow across the entire process. So what managers and everybody at all levels has to engage in is daily problem solving. But that begins with, and this is taken from Jeffrey Liker's book, The Toyota Way. If you look at the top, it says initial problem perception. Do we even perceive there to be a problem to begin with? And again, I said there's problems in your organization that have been around 5, 10, 15 years. Do we even perceive these as a problem? If you look at a current state value stream map where there's batch and queue processing, this is the way organizations will see patients or process parts or whatever it may be for decades. Nobody ever saw that as a problem. So we're not very good at even recognizing what a problem is to begin with. So we have to improve our observation skills to even be able to recognize a problem. Then we have to clarify the problem. Do we really see this correctly, or is it something else that we're seeing? To get at what is the real problem here. So we can create a problem statement that accurately reflects what's going on, and then do our root cause analysis and identify countermeasures and evaluate and standardize and so forth. So this is something that is not just for people in the radiology department or taking blood and so forth. There's middle managerial problems that occur with performance appraisal, with budgeting process. There's problems that occur at high level in organizations, and that the same methodologies for understanding and correcting problems must be applied throughout the organization. So one of the things I've asked my students over the years, in every class that I've had where I have graduate students that are like you, and this is mostly what I teach is graduate students who work full-time for a living, and I say to them, have any of you ever seen from a vice president or above a root cause analysis, a fishbone diagram, or a 5 whys? And what do you think the answer is? No, none, 0. So I've been teaching now 11, 12 years since I left industry. Answer is consistently 0. So that says that the managers think that this kind of analysis for people to do at the bottom and not for them, because they don't have any problems. It's all the problems are caused at the bottom. So this sends a mixed message, and one that is a turnoff for people. Here's an example of a bad problem that happened here. The loss of right hand and part of arm in a finger jointing machine. A piece of wood was stuck in the machine. An employee put their hand in the machine and tried to remove it. At the same time, the machine started to move and caught the employee's hand. The loss of the right hand up to the arm, close to the elbow. So in this safety flash, the immediate cause was seen as the routines were not followed. The injured worker was trying to remove material when the machine was running. The worker didn't use any additional equipment to remove the piece of wood and so forth. So what it's saying as far as the cause goes is this problem happens all the time, but the employee didn't deal with the problem the right way. Correct? And so what we have here basically is acceptance by management of a workaround. We have a known problem that they ignored, and the way they dealt with that problem you see that stick resting on the green part of the machine? That was the piece of wood that you shove in the machine to unjam it. And this was seen as an acceptable way of dealing with the problem, as opposed to, in the lean world, you'd say, what's causing this machine to jam to begin with? And how do we prevent this from occurring? And what mistake-proofing devices do we put there to assure that if somebody's hand is in there, the machine is off, for sure? And so normally what happens in organizations, we ignore these sorts of known problems and do workarounds, etc., and then it results in a big problem like this. So these are some different types of known problems that managers ignore. There's organizational politics and bureaucracy that do nothing other than slow down information flows. I mean, organizational politics is famous for one thing, delaying decisions, Second thing is for decisions that are often bad ones. We waited a long time, finally got a decision, and it was a bad one, which is no good. Blaming people for problems. We have people put in managerial level that shouldn't be there because they behave in ways that they actually take great fun out of tormenting the people that report to them. Obviously, that's not good. They have very long duration budgeting processes, metrics, performance metrics that are inconsistent with lean, and so on. So we have many different types of problems that managers ignore and treat as if it's this, stick that you just poke through there to do your work around. And we have to start looking at these things for what they are, and that these are serious problems that prevent people from improving processes. And when the people are subjected to these kinds of problems for long periods of time, not only do they potentially suffer physical injuries, but mental injuries as well from a chronic stress environment and whatnot. It is important to recognize that the leadership behaviors affect the responsiveness to identifying and correcting problems. Okay, so an organization that has a lot of politics and bureaucracy and so forth looks like this. My watch says minutes and seconds, correct? But an organization with politics, the clock changes to Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and are really bad with lots of hierarchy in politics, January, February, March, April, May, June. The time scale for doing things becomes elongated, and part of this process or part of this outcome is due to these behaviors that disrupt the flow and essentially change clock time in your organization. And that's not good because your patients and so forth are working off of what time? Hours and minutes. So think of it this way. The way of great lean leaders is continuous improvement requires respect for people. Respect for people requires having a process focus. Having a process focus requires thinking and analysis. Thinking and analysis requires asking why. Asking why requires curiosity. Curiosity requires humility. And of course, humility requires you to not think you know it all. So these are the kind of sort of way of behavioral and leadership characteristics of lean leaders. They're comfortable asking why. They don't mind, if being called out on a particular problem. They are always looking for ways to improve. This is a general mindset that's in play. This slide, sometimes a little controversial. Don't confuse getting an A or receiving a diploma with knowing anything. And what I mean by that is, most of our education relates to a world of batch and queue processing, either explicitly or implicitly. And we do not understand flow. If we did, flow would be ubiquitous. But it's not. It'd be all over the place, but it's not. And so this tells us that the ways in which we're educated might be good from a technical perspective, that we know how to do certain procedures and so forth well, but it doesn't inform us at all about flow. And the only people really who would have any kind of diploma that's close to understanding about flow would typically be an industrial engineer, but that would be about it. And even then, sometimes they don't understand that. So it forces us to really rethink what it is we know from a technical standpoint in the context of trying to achieve flow. And we need to get comfortable with that. So why is lean difficult for managers to do? Well, think of it this way. If you inherit a used car, the car is a system, right? You inherit it. If you inherit this from a friend or a family member, what are you going to do? Most likely you're going to wash and wax the car, clean the car, right? What you need to do with lean is you're actually working to improve the thermal efficiency, improve the mileage, etc. of the automobile. So you're doing something fundamentally different. You sustain lean management through daily practice. So you have to practice lean principles and methods in some way, shape, or form. And there's definitely some things here that you can do to succeed with lean that are enumerated. You can pull down the presentation. I think we're up on time here. And a lot of time wasted here. People think they know what respect for people means. Many years pass. It turns out they didn't know it. So a lot of focus needs to be on this. I've also provided for you here some practical actions to take. So Stina's going to put these slides up, and you can draw some inspiration and some ideas from here. So, Tak, thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. And of course, you can, if you want to see the slides, you can download the presentation through the website. I will get some water for you. And since I realized lean for you is a way of thinking, a way of living.
Yeah.
Do you practice lean as a parent?
Yes.
Yeah, how?
Yeah, it's hard. Try not to blame the kids.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed Sweden.
I do. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, everybody.